Welcome to Neuroseduction, Put Science Back into Neuroscience, with me, Lalit Vimapalli. Today we have with us Dr. Gregory Riggins. Dr. Riggins is a research professor who runs a leading cancer research laboratory. He is also skilled in molecular biology, translational studies, early phase trials, and oncology drug development. So, Dr. Riggins, since you traveled the long and arduous path of becoming a doctor, what inspired you to go into medicine, and specifically oncology research?
The reason's personal. As a medical student, I found out that I had a cancer, I had lymphoma, and so I wanted to do for medicine what was done in the past that saved my life. So I wanted to try to give back in that way and try to make life better for cancer patients.
So, becoming a doctor requires many years of schooling and dedication to keep continuing. On top of that, you also worked to receive a PhD. What would you say the process is like to pursue an MD and a PhD?
So there's training programs called medical scientist training programs, which are pretty much what they sound like. They are designed for people to improve the field of medicine, and not simply to practice, but be able to do both the research and the clinical care. Now there's different routes that you can take. I took the less traveled route, which was to focus more on the research. But generally, people will run research labs and have a practice at the same time. I went 100% research.
So, COVID has impacted the field of medicine and many other fields. And how is your work kind of affected due to the pandemic? And how have scientists, science, and research changed in your view due to the pandemic?
Well, it certainly has slowed things down and has required a lot of adjustment, a lot more working from home. Times when the lab was shut down, times when I had to go in sort of an emergency basis. But it's a big adjustment. But I'd give a big shout out to the university that I'm at, Johns Hopkins. They really adjusted rapidly and delivered excellent clinical care while simultaneously doing a significant amount of research on COVID-19.
So, as we learned in the pandemic, there was many ways we could have, changed for medicine. And medicine is always incorporating different aspects to become better at helping people. What would you say do you want the field of medicine and research to develop in the next 10 years?
How do I want it to develop, or
Yeah.
how do I want it to change?
Yeah.
For the better. The system for funding research is a difficult path, and it's become much more difficult since I started my career over 20 years ago as a faculty member at a university, and it's become more and more difficult to pursue sort of the classic path of getting your PhD or your MD and PhD and running a research laboratory and getting it funded. We have one of the best funding systems in the world through the National Institutes of Health, but it still is, it's still not perfect, and it's risk adverse. And the partnerships between industry and the government and academia are, they happen, but they're very difficult. There's lots of obstructions. So the improvements are really to one big improvement is to try to find a pathway that doesn't involve, that's not hinged to a profit.
Yeah.
That's not necessary to sell. And that's especially important for some of the things we work on, like pediatric cancers, where the market's not there for the large pharmaceuticals. So there needs to be a non-profit pathway for developing cancer drugs and better cancer therapies, as well as the ability to deliver them at an affordable cost so that they're not just for the rich.
Yeah. As a cancer researcher, can you describe some of the research you have been doing in the lab?
Yes, yeah. So our lab is it's started off as finding the genes, or helping find the genes that cause cancer, that are mutated during the development of cancer. But it's developed into a translational lab, specifically for brain cancers. So I think we recognized early on that simply finding the gene doesn't lead to a cure.
Yeah.
And that would be one of the changes I would say in research, that we need to bridge the gap between the basic science and the clinic much better. It's the most difficult area, and it doesn't get the attention that it deserves. Our work is basically developing new therapies for brain cancer, and we're probably best known in the media for an accidental discovery that we made many years in the laboratory, where we found this old pinworm medicine. Mebendazole had properties that made it suitable for exploration for the treatment of brain cancers. That's led to two different clinical trials at Johns Hopkins, one for adult brain cancers, one for pediatric brain cancers. And the field for studying repurposed drugs has opened up quite a bit, and gives some hope that there'll be some better and safer therapies that are also, relatively inexpensive to develop and to deliver to patients.
Yeah. There's a lot of distrust in science and research, partially because people don't understand the rigor that science is based upon. How have you avoided this pitfall with your profession?
Well, I'm not sure it's a good thing that it has been avoided, because what has happened is, the scientists work with other scientists, and people that our grants are reviewed by other scientists, our papers are read by other scientists, but bridging the gap to for the general public to understand it. There is a big divide that has become very obvious in this country and around the world, between those people that believe in science and those people that don't believe in science. And it's gotten to the point where the people that don't believe in science, it's not enough for them not to believe in it. It has become, many have taken an aggressive stance to try to, see disinformation, from the highest levels all the way down, and to undercut science.
Yeah.
So I think scientists need to be more active in the education, and in the policy areas, and I think maybe recently things are changing for the better in terms of the influence of science, but it's clear there's a big problem with an educational system that hasn't taught the lessons of what, a lot of the foundations of science and engineering that, society's built on.
Yeah. So there are many students who are interested in the field of medicine. What is some advice you can give to them?
Well, if you're planning on going to medical school, my advice has always been, if that is the only thing that you want to do,
Yeah.
then go for it, and not worry about the obstacles. But one should keep in mind that it is not an easy road. It is not a road that is done to become personally wealthy. In fact, on average, engineers leave behind a larger estate when they die than do MDs on average. And a lot of that has to do with the length of training, the expense of training, and the lifestyle that's maintained for doctors. But if that's what your dream is, then you should pursue it. But you should pursue it for the right reasons.
Thank you, Dr. Riggins, for generously giving us time today. This was definitely an educational awakening, and I really enjoyed learning from you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.